Hi, everyone. Hey, if you're in there, say hello. Roxana Chavez, hi. I'm doing great. How are you? Happy Saturday to you, too. Right, welcome, everyone. If you're in there, say hello. We have a lot of stuff to cover today, so I'll try to make it as painless as possible. I'll try to be quick. Ellison, hi, Ellison. Welcome back. Nice to see Roxana and Ellison coming back every time. Let me do the usual announcements. First of all, thank you very much for joining us today. It's great to see familiar faces and some new faces. Actually, last week we had quite a few new people. Really appreciate it. Please hit the like button when you start watching the live stream. For some reason, when people start liking the live stream, there's something going on with my phone. Hold on just a second. I'm sorry about that. Yeah, I'm really sorry about it. Just before I started the session, I had a problem with the phone, and somebody was calling me back. It's a bit of a mess, and it's happening again. Sorry about it. I tried to set the phone so that it wouldn't ring, but something went wrong. All right, so back to this. All right, as I mentioned, hit the like button if you can, so that YouTube will know that the live stream is going on, and then they start showing other people. Choice, welcome, Choice. How's it going? See, it's nice to see new people, old people. Not that you guys are old, just familiar faces. See, yeah, I will have time for you to ask me questions as usual, but while I'm talking, if you want to discuss something, talk to each other, feel free to do so. Make sure you follow community guidelines. We haven't had any problems with people, needing to be booted out of the live stream so far, but it's always good to remind people. Okay, I will give it some time to ask questions. If you do ask a question and I don't see it, just remind me, ask me again. Got a lot of stuff that I have to look at here, and sometimes I don't look at the chat. Reminder about super chats and super stickers. That's one way for you to show your appreciation for the work that I do. Everything that I do here costs money. I'm trying to make this my daytime job. Hopefully one day I'll be able to just, do this full time. In the meantime, I really appreciate it. Any contribution is great. When you send a super chat, you can ask a question, or some people just send a super chat just to be supportive. That's really great. I really appreciate it. Another way to support the channel is to become a channel member. Some people do it because they get perks. That's great. I'm here to offer you some of these perks. Some people do it just to support the channel. Once again, I really appreciate it. Also, you can follow me on social media, on Instagram and Twitter. I started posting to Instagram. Instagram just made it easier for people to post the way that I wanted to. So now, it's a good opportunity for me to connect with you guys through Instagram. I've actually met people from all different parts of the world because they comment on, like in social media, they write comments and you start chatting back and forth. So that's another way for you to get in touch with me, so we can have a closer relationship than just watching a video and liking the video and moving on. Robson Awesome from Brazil. Welcome, Robson. Lots of people from Brazil. Last time I was in Brazil, I was really amazed how many people speak really good English there. You guys are doing a great job. All right, so let's get it started. Anyone coming in, please say your name and where you're from. I know Ellison is from Brazil. Roxana is from Mexico, right, Roxana? Roxana is one of our channel members. She was one of the first people who become a member, and she's been such a trooper. She also subscribed to the other channel, Snap Language Learner, that I started posting a lot of videos to, Snap Language Learner. And that channel needs to grow a lot before I start monetizing it, so it's really appreciated when I see Roxana there commenting, watching videos, and so forth. I really appreciate it. So let us, oops, wrong screen. Let's get to it. So today we'll talk about how to improve your vocabulary and reading skills in your target language. The reason I lumped, Roxana from Mexico, I was almost certain about that. Fernando Chirino, hello, from Argentina. Wow, so we have Argentina, Brazil, Mexico. I'm not sure where Choice is from. That's pretty cool. Hello from the US. Thanks so much for joining us. So we'll be talking about improving vocabulary and reading together. One of the reasons that I lumped vocabulary and reading skills together is that in my experience teaching ESL reading, when I ask my students their greatest difficulty with reading, I think the top answer they give me is vocabulary. They say, "Oh, it's so hard to read when every 10th word I don't know. I don't understand the words," and they get so frustrated with the vocabulary that it interferes with reading. So I'll be talking about reading first, and then I'll bring up vocabulary now and again, and towards the end we'll talk about vocabulary and how you can merge the two, how you can read to improve your vocabulary, improve your vocabulary to improve your reading. It walks hand in hand. Ramonica from Texas. Katie Denson from New Mexico, Albuquerque, New Mexico. Choice is from Lithuania. Wow. We have people from all over the world today. That's pretty neat. So Choice from Lithuania, Texas, Ramonica Abron. I don't remember Ramonica being here before. If this is your first time, welcome. Thanks for joining us. I hope you enjoy it. Okay, so let's move on with this. So what are we doing today? So we're talking about the vocabulary reading connections. We'll look at what makes you effective. But before we even start talking about improving reading in your target language, I think we need to talk about reading. Reading in your L1 or L2, regardless, okay? And then we'll talk about some tips. Remember, I don't offer one-size-fits-all solutions, no snake oil. Reading is difficult. Vocabulary acquisition can be frustrating. It takes time. I'll just give you tips, share my experience with you, and successes that I've had with my students and that I've had myself learning other languages that hopefully you'll be able to use yourself and make your language learning journey a little easier. I've already talked about that. Remember the quick definitions that, remember the abbreviations that we use in these sessions, L1 or native language or mother tongue. So when I say your L1 or your L2, I'm talking about your native language. L2 is your language, your native language. And I'm sorry, L2 is whatever language you're learning, okay? So if you're here because you're learning French or you're learning Portuguese or you're learning Chinese, that's your target language, okay? I know many people are here because they are learning English as a second language. So when I say your TL or your L2, that's what I'm talking about. It's whatever language you're learning. Okay, something that's, before we even start talking about reading, vocabulary and all that, something I wanted to keep in mind, that in English, as pretty much with most languages, you have you have two types of language in general. Okay, they're called registers. A register is the language you use depending on the social situation. So, for example, when you talk to your friends, when you talk to your family in an everyday situation, you use informal spoken or an informal spoken language. Okay, when you talk to, I don't know, your professor, when you talk to someone you don't know very well, or in a business situation, you use a formal register, right? There is an overlap between your informal register and your formal register. Depending on the language, the intersection here can be smaller or bigger. Okay, that means that the language you use in everyday life coincides with the language that you use in a formal situation. Some languages are really far apart. The way you speak to your friends and everyday conversations can be very different from formal written language. Okay, so depending on what your target language is, keep that in mind. It's almost as though you have to learn two sets of languages. You have to learn the rules for the informal spoken language, but you also have to learn the rules for the formal written language. Okay. Also remember from our first or second session, I talked about your different motivations for learning the language. Perhaps you're not interested in the formal language. Let's say you're learning Spanish. You don't care about writing in Spanish. You don't care about reading, very complicated, very complex materials in Spanish. You just want to be able to speak Spanish. In that case, what are you doing here? Why are you interested in reading? Oh, maybe, you're interested in learning vocabulary, okay? But most people, when they start learning the formal language, they want to read at least a little bit. They want to be able to write a few things. And some people want to get deep into the written form, okay? So depending on what your motivation is, this may not be that important, or this may not be that important, okay? If you want to learn a language just to be able to read it, who cares about the spoken language? So keep that in mind, okay? We also need to understand what reading is. So what is reading all about? That's something that we do almost every day. Some people more, some people less than others. We go out and we see signs on the street. We read quick things, or we sit down and read the newspaper. We read books. We get on social media and we read posts and so forth. So we're always reading. So sometimes we don't really think about what reading really is. Okay, so just keep this in mind. Reading exists because writers write, and writers write with a purpose. Okay, the only reason that we learn to read, we go to school and we learn to read, is because of writing. Okay. So if you're going to write something, you have a reason for that. Okay? You don't decide to write for no reason whatsoever. Okay? Why did human beings even come up with writing? We didn't need to come up with writing. We could just communicate by speaking. Oh, we wanted to record information. We want to make sure that we could write things down so other people could have access to that information. So writers encode information in writing so you can disseminate it to potential readers, right? So keep that in mind. So think about it. So when you get something to read, let's say you get an article in the newspaper, somebody put information there. They use the language and the writing system to encode. They got their thoughts from their heads and put their thoughts on a piece of paper, on a computer, on a sign, okay? So someone was having problems here with dogs pooping in the park, and people were leaving the poop in the park. So somebody said, oh, I'm going to write a sign, and I'm going to get this idea that I have in my head saying, hey, if your dog poops come on, man, pick it up, throw it out. Don't leave it on the grass. Okay? So when you read this, you're actually getting information that came out of someone else's head, and now it's in your head. Okay? Yeah, and then let me move this over here. And then this happens, right? When you read something, you need to learn the content, right? That's why we read. So when you read this, you want to understand what someone wanted to communicate to you. So we read to learn something. There's a message. So this piece of writing here has a message in it. And when you read it, you're not worried about the vocabulary, the punctuation, the grammar. The writer wrote using vocabulary, grammar, punctuation, and so forth to deliver a message to you. You're more concerned about understanding the content. Okay? As a reader, your role is to decode and interpret the writer's message. Of course, this is a joke. Of course, this man understood you're not supposed to pick the dog up, you're supposed to pick up the poop. But perhaps the message was not very clear, so you can interpret this message in two different ways, right? And that's what supposedly makes this kind of funny. I thought it was funny. So please keep this in mind. When you read, you're reading because somebody put information in some medium, and you're getting that information through reading to decode that message. So now you can put that message in your head, which is kind of cool, right? That we can read something that someone wrote 500, 1,000 years ago. Someone 1,000 years ago had ideas, wrote them down, and now as you're reading that 1,000-year-old piece of writing, you hear someone else's voice in your head. Someone 1,000 years ago had those ideas that you're now processing in your head. Just pretty cool. Okay, so why am I saying all this? I'm saying this because a lot of times people read without really understanding what they're supposed to do. Okay, we read without understanding the process of reading. And I believe that when you understand reading, you go, oh, so if what I'm supposed to do is decode the message, I have to get the message. You stop worrying about vocabulary, punctuation, all that stuff. You don't worry so much about the stuff on the piece of paper because, my teacher said it's going to be on the test. So I need to be able to read and answer questions about it. But that's not what reading is for, right? Reading is not for you to read and answer questions, comprehension questions. Reading is there for you to understand a message. And we lose track of the purpose of reading. When you're learning a second language, that is multiplied, tenfold. We get so obsessed with the language, with the words, and they use different punctuation. Oh, I don't know this word. I don't know this. Oh, what does this word mean? Well, you're not reading. You're studying the text, but you're not really understanding it. You're not absorbing that information. Okay, so keep that in mind. So what do people do when you say, oh, so and so reads really well? Okay, what do effective readers do that makes them effective? For one, effective readers read a variety of materials. They don't read only one type of writing. They read a variety of materials. They read purposefully. Okay, to read purposefully means that as you get that piece of writing, you have a goal. You have an objective. It's not to answer questions on the test. It's not to study vocabulary. Your goal is not to, look at the grammar. Your goal when you read something is to understand the content, right? So Effective readers know what they have to do. They know that they need to understand the message. They need to get into the text and know what is the topic. What does the author want to say about the topic? Is the author teaching me something? Is the author telling me a story because there's a moral to that story? Is the writer arguing a point? Okay, so an effective reader looks at a passage and understand what the author wanted to do with that passage. And later, I'll talk about things that you can do to figure that out. If you're interested in this, I have an article on the Snap Language website about reading purposefully. You can take a look at it. If you say, well, but how do I know how to get to that article? Well, go to the comment in this live stream. Not the comment. Go to the description to the live stream, and I listed this article and other links that I'll be using during the presentation. Okay, and also, if effective readers read actively, they don't just sit there and let the information come into their minds. They ask questions, they look at it, they turn the page, they get outside information, they go find other sources to corroborate what that author is saying. Okay? They question the validity of the information. They get the information and they actively manipulate that information, well, in their minds. They engage with the author in a way. The author's not there in person, but it's as if you're having a conversation with whoever wrote the piece of writing. I'm taking a quick look at the comments. Okay, and rarely. So what do effective readers do? Rarely, if ever, do they read to learn vocabulary. Okay? I've never met an effective reader before that I said, okay, so when you read, what do you do when you read? Never have they told me, oh, I read because I want to learn the vocabulary in the passage. No, they read to understand the content. They read to learn new information. They read because they want a new perspective on an issue. They read a variety of materials, so they have a well-rounded understanding on a particular topic. Vocabulary. If you ask an effective reader, say, "Oh, do you think that you can learn a lot of vocabulary through reading?" They'll say, "Oh, yeah," because it's a byproduct of reading. Okay, so learning vocabulary through reading should be a byproduct. Or you can use reading as a tool to learn vocabulary. But these are separate things, okay? You can learn vocabulary through reading, yes, through sheer exposure to vocabulary words. But when you're reading, you should focus on reading, okay? Or you can use reading to learn vocabulary, okay? But then you're not reading anymore. You're focusing on the words that the author used. Let me look at some tips. To improve your reading. So, well, read with a purpose. Okay, what does that mean? So, for example, in storytelling, writers build a story with different parts, different ideas. There's a proposal. Okay, the story has a problem. It has a theme. Okay, the author wants to write about a particular. Usually, it has to do with a particular human emotion or a particular human weakness, or things that happen to human beings. Okay, so the storyteller has this idea about a particular theme. There's a problem. There's something the author is setting out to describe through storytelling. Okay, Well, how does that happen? Well, there are arguments. Well, in storytelling, the arguments are the events. Okay, so there's a sequence of events. The characters react to what's going on. They react to each other. All of that is building the story, but it's based on the premise that the author has, the problem or the issue that the author wants to tackle. Okay, and when you finish reading a story, oh, I see. So this book, the story where the sequence of events happened, has a meaning. It has a message in it. That would be like the conclusion of the story. So when you read with purpose, every time you pick up a book, you already know that you're going to have the proposition of a problem or an issue. You're going to have arguments. You're going to have situations or events, characters engaging in it, and there's a meaning behind it. Okay, and any story will have that. Even if you watch a movie, it doesn't have to be a written story. It could be a visual material. It could be a movie. If you have academic materials, you're going to have a thesis. But academic materials, I mean, for example, you read an article, like a scientific article or something like that. Something where you're supposed to learn something. It's not a story. It's something that has academic content in it. Okay, so there's a thesis. There's something that the author believes, and the author is setting out to show you that fact or that idea that the author wants to defend or something like that. Okay, then the author will write paragraphs with arguments supporting that thesis. So everything that you read, once you understand, usually in the first or the first two paragraphs, you should understand what the author is setting out to do in that passage, in that article. Then everything else, now you know, because you're reading with a purpose, you already know that each paragraph should support that thesis. So as you're reading each paragraph, you have to keep the thesis in mind. Oh, this is what the author set out to do, and the author is using the information in this paragraph to support it. Again, I said, you should be an active reader. Do you agree with it? Does it make sense? Do you think the arguments the author is using are, founded in fact? Is there a lot of opinion there? And on and on and on. And then, of course, the conclusion will be, yep, the author supported the thesis. You don't have to agree with the author, because as an active reader, you're asking questions, you're doubting things, and you're interjecting with outside information, things that you may already know, and so forth. If you're interested in this whole reading process, I have on the Snap Language website, I have this advanced reading course. It's quite extensive. It has a bunch of videos. Actually, that's how Snap Language started. I was making videos for my college reading students, and you can go through this entire lesson. So there's an introduction here, and then you have some activities. So this activity is a video on the Snap Language YouTube channel. This is another video, and then you just keep reading this, continue the lesson. You have another video here, related materials. I mean, you can get lost here, doing this. I wouldn't recommend doing this, the same day. You might want to bookmark the page, go back to it every now and again. Once you finish this, you've had like a whole semester with me, a whole college level semester in reading. Okay, news articles. Again, the news article will give you events. These events have implications. A lot of times the author will present information that you may think, oh, that's a fact, but wait a minute, is it a fact or is it the author's opinion? And even in a news article, if someone presents a fact, you have to be an active reader. You have to read actively. Is the writer leaving out important information? Maybe the writer has an agenda. They want me to believe what they believe, or because they believe in something, they leave out information that does not support their belief. Okay, then maybe you need to do some extra research, get out of the article and go read something else. In textbook, like school textbook, same thing. Each chapter has a topic, and that topic has subtopics and so forth. So every time, the reason I'm saying all this is that every time you get a news article, you get a textbook, or you get a novel or some academic material, you should know what the purpose is for that material. And based on that, you go, okay, so from reading the first paragraph here, the author wants to convince me, the author wants to persuade me of this. Okay, now you have to keep in mind that that's the thesis of that passage. Every paragraph should support the thesis. Some paragraphs will support the thesis very well, some will not. Okay, now you will be engaging in that discussion with the author, okay, where you don't have to agree with everything that people write. Okay, so talk with the passage, ask questions, doubt things, annotate, take notes. Sometimes when I read something online, if it's just something in the news, I just read it. I don't take notes, I don't annotate. But if you want to read more deeply, if it's something you really need to understand, I have to get a hard copy, I have to get a pencil or a pen, and I start writing all over it. I annotate on the margins. Sometimes I have a question, I write my question on the side. That's my way of engaging with the article. If I really have to study something, I take notes. I get a separate piece of paper, and as I'm reading, I'm outlining the passage, I'm writing the main points. So I'm writing on the actual article, I'm writing on a separate piece of paper. In other words, I'm not just reading with my eyes, I'm using, all my senses. You reread, okay? You finish reading something, you know that you have to go back and reread because you usually get more information out of it when you read it a second time. Remember week 7 when we talked about listening activities? I said, find some material, listen to it, take notes, do whatever, go back and watch it again. But then I said, make sure you discuss what you listen to. Same thing with reading. If you have an opportunity to discuss it, you will retain the information much better. Okay. Sometimes, I read something in the news, I find it interesting. I'll probably forget most of it, but then I talked to a friend of mine on the phone and said, "Oh, I read something really interesting today." And I will summarize the information to that person. And if I'm lucky and the person says, "Oh, I read it too," we have a discussion about it. Okay. Now, if you're learning a second language, I really propose you don't skip this step because it will really help you retain more of the information, including retain the vocabulary in that passage. Because if that passage had new vocabulary and you don't discuss it, you will forget it. But if you read it, you learn new vocabulary from the context, and then you tell someone, it will force you to remember the vocabulary before you forget it. Okay, so it really helps to discuss things. Another tip: recognize what your L1 reading level is. As a teacher, when I teach reading, a lot of times students are having difficulties and they complain about, my reading in English, right? They're learning English. They say, I can't read in English and it's so hard and blah, blah, blah. And then when I start talking to them, asking questions about their reading in general, reading in their native language, I realize that they're not good readers in their L1. Okay, so if you're not a good reader in your L1, yes, you're going to have difficulties reading in L2. Okay, so don't expect if you're not. If you're not an effective reader in your L1, you can't expect to be an effective reader in L2. Okay? Though you could become a good reader in your L2 because now you're like really interested in improving your reading in your L2, and that will actually help your reading in your L1. Just think about that. Learning a second language helps you improve your L1, which I think is pretty cool. You start noticing things about your language that you wouldn't notice unless you were learning that second language. So once you recognize your reading level in your L1, well, you can do something about it. You can try to improve it, as you also try to learn reading in your second language. But remember that even if you consider yourself an effective L1 reader, you cannot expect to be as effective in your L2. People get really frustrated sometimes. Sometimes I have students who they're ESL students, but like in their home countries, they have master's degrees and they went to college. They're really good readers. So when they read in English, they get really frustrated because they say, "But I know how to read. I can read in my language. I read every day and I understand everything. But when I read in English, it's so hard." I said, well, just chill. So keep that in mind so you don't get frustrated. Okay, if you are a good reader in your L1, you will be a good reader in your L2 as well. But you need time to build, to transfer that that knowledge to your L2, and you also need you need vocabulary, you need grammar. You need to understand the grammar and really feel the grammar. That it takes time. Okay, so chill, just take it easy. Some more tips. Remember in the listening session, I said, if you're having difficulties listening, and if you want to improve, start by listening to information that you are familiar with. It could even be like news that you are already familiar with. I think the example I gave was, that article about COVID that you could also listen to. Everybody knows about the pandemic and everybody's talking about it. So that's a relatively easy topic for you to read in any language because you already know about the topic. Same thing with reading. Read something that's familiar first until you gain some confidence in your reading skill in the second language, and then you can start reading things that are more unfamiliar. You can start learning new things through reading in your second language. But that depends on your reading level right now. No, I'm sure each one of you here will have very different reading levels in your target language. If you find it really difficult to read in your target language, well, start with the familiar, move to the unfamiliar. You have to find the point of diminishing returns. Find the Goldilocks zone, which should be just above your language level. Okay, so if you're just starting, let's say you just started learning your second language, don't try to read the newspaper in that language right away. Okay, it'll be. I mean, reading a newspaper can be difficult in your native language, right? Don't try to read like this complicated novel in your second language. No, just if you just started, read short passages, maybe short stories. Read instructional materials first. No, start with the familiar, move on to the unfamiliar, and as your language skills improve, then you can keep pushing, challenging yourself with more and more difficult things to read. Okay. Again, people get very frustrated because they say, "Oh, I tried to read this book, but I couldn't understand anything," and I'm like, "Why are you reading this book?" No, even native speakers have a hard time reading something like that. So find that Goldilocks zone. Okay, something that's not too easy, but it's not too difficult either. Otherwise, instead of helping yourself improve your reading, you'll just get frustrated and possibly give up. Get help. Get help selecting reading materials, especially at first. Go to your local library and ask the librarian. Say, "Oh, I'm learning French. Can you show me materials that I could read in French? For like people that are learning." If you have a French teacher, ask your teacher. I'm interested in learning things on the side in addition to the textbook. They'll help you. Come to Snap Language. Here you are. On a Saturday, you're getting help. You're trying to figure things out. And also, depending on the language, it may be easier or harder for you to find materials. If you're learning English, you're in luck. You have tons of materials. Some materials are graded, like very easy, like level 1, level 2, level 3. So you find the level that you can read, understand, but it's not too easy. Then it's boring. Okay. So you know that that's your reading level, and then you try to push it. If you don't know how to find these materials, go to a library, ask them, how do I find these level materials? Also, balance instructional and authentic materials. An instructional passage or instructional materials are designed to teach you the language. Okay, so if you're taking a course in English, you're learning English, here's your textbook, lesson 1. They have vocabulary, they have a passage, exercises. They're okay. Okay, it's a great way for you to learn reading, writing, listening, and all that. So if you want to find more instructional materials, let's say you're learning German. Oh, there's a book here for you to learn. There's a book for you to improve your reading in German, but the book is made for learners. Fine. I don't have a problem with that. But also try to get authentic materials that were written to communicate a message, to communicate information, to tell a story. They were written not to teach language, not to teach vocabulary. A writer wanted to write something, and that's what they came up with. Okay? Authentic materials can be difficult sometimes because they're not writing for you, the language learner. But, you can find, there are many sources out there that you can find, like a blog. A blog might be an interesting, fun thing to read because people use everyday language. They don't make it too complicated. You can find a blog in your target language and follow that blogger and read that blog every day or every week. Okay, balance instructional materials, authentic materials. This is really important. Okay, you have to make a difference. You have to discern between your reading time and your study time. So I want to improve my reading. I know that the way to improve my reading in my target language is to read. But if you get something to read, okay, so here's, I got this material, I'm going to read this. Read it. Don't study the vocabulary, don't study the grammar, don't study the punctuation. Read it. Read it to understand the content, right? That's what reading is about. Oh, but I also want to study vocabulary. Fine. Read the material. That's your reading time. Afterwards, you can study the material. Okay? But don't think that if you're reading something by looking at the words and studying, you're not reading. Okay? You're really not reading. You're not going to be able to get the information that you need to get out of reading if you're looking at everything except the content. Okay? And most importantly, in my opinion, read with a focus on learning the content. That's what I just said, right? So always read with a focus on understanding what did the author put into this passage that now I need to transfer into my brain. Somebody had thoughts. 10 years ago, 100 years ago, whatever. They put their thoughts on a piece of paper or on a computer. And now I need to, through reading, I need to decode this message and have the information in my head. I have to hear that person's thought. If you're not focused on that, you're not reading. Okay, you're not doing what reading is meant to do. And also something that I always talk to my students about, and it seems to be kind of a revelation for them, is as you're reading anything, focus on the content, but for you to understand the content better, find patterns of information in the passage. Okay, let me give you an easy example to understand what I mean by patterns of information. So you get a passage, it's just a bunch of words, right? It's like, oh my God, this is confusing. You don't understand anything because, yeah, you just started looking at it, okay? But then as you're looking at it, you have headings, right? You have the title, you have an introduction, and then you have headings. Okay, as you look at the title tells you something. Maybe the title tells you what the topic is. You read the introduction. Oh, I think this is what the author's trying to do. The author's trying to teach me the information about this topic. Okay, and then you see the first heading says how to do this. The second heading says why you should do this. And then there's another heading saying the problems. You go like, oh, I see a pattern. There's a structure. I guess another way of saying this is to, visualize the structure in that passage. Once you start looking at the pattern, so you have an introduction, here's the topic, and then the author gives me something about the topic, examples, explanations, comparisons. Okay, then the next paragraph adds to that information, which is also about the topic. Okay, I see that. What is the new information? Oh, this is the new information, which they call the main idea in reading. Okay, and then you have definitions, more. Oh, okay, so you start seeing a pattern. When I'm taking notes, that's the pattern that I'm trying to put on a piece of paper on the side. What are the parts? What is the structure of that passage? Once you can see that structure in your mind, it gets much easier for you to have a picture of that information. It's no longer just rah, 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 lots of words. You see some kind of a structure. Okay, I hope this is making sense. If it's not making sense, go to that link to the reading course. I get into that, at length, especially the part talking about main ideas, paragraphs, and things like that. My students really enjoyed that those videos. I think it's very helpful. See, you guys are quiet because you're taking notes. I know that now. If you have any questions, just let me know. Okay, just a quick thank you here to my channel members. Roxana is in the room. Thank you so much, Roxana, for being a member. Thais, Rahul, Cesar, Ian, Dwee, D'Angelo, and Paul Humphreys. If you're in the room, say hello. I appreciate your support. It really helps a lot. Every dollar makes it possible for me to continue doing this, and I appreciate it. All right, let's talk about some strategies. I've already mentioned some of this, but if you want to know, okay, tell me how to do it. Give me one strategy or a set of strategies for reading. So this is what I suggest. Before you start reading, there are things that you need to do that will help you understand it. Okay. Usually when, I as a professor, I give my students something for them to read. They start reading, they go right to the first paragraph and they start reading. And I go, no, don't do that. Don't do that. You have to pre-read the material to be able to understand it better. First, look at the material. Okay, so I gave you this to read. Don't start reading because you have no idea what you're reading. If you just start reading, maybe it's going to be like the second page when you go, oh, now I know what this passage is. You have to go back and start reading again. Okay, so before you start reading, look at it. Look at the title. Ooh, there are headings. Turn the page. Ooh, there's a picture. Oh, the picture shows what the topic is. Okay, maybe there's a table. Okay, look at the last paragraph. Okay, so now I have some idea what this is going to be about because I examined the material. If you want, you can do what's called skimming. The way to skim is you read the first paragraph, because usually the first paragraph tells you, the author tells you what the passage is all about. The author tells you what the objective is for that passage. So if you read the first paragraph, you're not reading it, you're preparing yourself. But once you read the first paragraph, you have a really good idea what that passage is going to be about. And then quickly look at one or two lines for each paragraph, just quickly. You're not reading, you're just looking. Now you're getting more information. Okay, looking at the headings and go, oh, I think I know what this is going to be about. Some people like to read the last paragraph. I personally don't read the last paragraph because that's like the conclusion, kind of like, it's like watching the end of a movie. But sometimes I do. I don't know, it depends. Okay. So now that you looked at it, you examined it, looked at pictures, you skimmed it a little bit, now you're ready to read. Okay. Roxana, you're awesome. Roxana sent a super chat. Thank you so much, Roxana. You're awesome. It really helps. Believe me, it really, really helps a lot. Let me replay this. There you go. You get some fireworks. Thank you so much, Roxana. Oh, that thing was on top. Snap was on top of it. Do it again. Thank you so much, Roxana. I appreciate it. Okay, so you did your pre-reading. You have a good idea already what the passage is going about. Now you go back, read very closely. For each paragraph, you're going to focus not on the vocabulary, not on the grammar. You're going to focus on the content. You already know the purpose during your pre-reading and looking. So each paragraph will relate to the thesis or the purpose. Now, as you're reading those paragraphs, you're already relating it to what you found out the article was about, the purpose for that passage. You're not trying to figure it out as you're reading. Again, read actively. So every paragraph relates to the thesis or to the main, idea of the whole passage. Write on the margins, take notes, underline things, draw a picture, sing about it, whatever you need to do to engage with that material to help you remember the information. Ooh, big black letters here. Do not interrupt your reading to look up every word you don't know. Do not interrupt your reading to look up every word you don't know. It's very, very tempting when you're learning a second language to, you read something, I don't know this word. You stop, you get your dictionary, and now because, you can get your iPhone out and look up the word, you stop reading, you look the word up, okay, and then you go back. Well, your brain has already disconnected from the passage. And you should keep that flow of information as steady as possible as you're reading it. Oh, but if I don't understand the word, how can I read? You can, okay? A lot of times you don't understand words that are not that important in that paragraph. You can understand it from the context. You kind of have an idea what that word means. A lot of times the author will write a word, introduce a concept using a particular word, and then explain it, give examples. So don't waste time looking up the word, because the author is going to tell you what that word means, okay, without interrupting your reading, because the author will explain it, giving examples that are pertinent to what you're reading, okay? The only time that, unfortunately, when you're reading a second language, sometimes you have to stop to look a word up, is if that word makes it impossible for you to understand what you're reading. You're reading a paragraph, you know the paragraph is important, and that word, you don't know what it is. Okay? Or let's say that the paragraph is about blah, and you don't know what blah means. Well, the whole passage is about blah. You're going to have to look it up, okay? But keep it to a minimum, okay? Don't interrupt your reading. Force yourself to understand what words mean from the context. Force yourself to distinguish, is this word really important? Okay, and just keep reading. Most of the time that you stop to look up a word, you didn't really have to. You just interrupted your reading. Okay, then summarize that information, discuss it, reread it, and all that stuff. So that's the strategy. Okay, before you start reading, look around, skim the material, make sure you understand what the author is about to do. And for each paragraph, focus on the content. How does the information in each paragraph support, the author's objective or purpose or thesis or argument and so forth? Read actively, take a lot of notes. Don't stop at every word you don't understand. And after you read, still engage with the material by summarizing, talking to someone else about it, rereading it, and so forth. Okay. All right. Vocabulary time now. Can I study vocabulary? Yes. You finished reading. Moludi El Batuli, welcome. Hello. Welcome to the session. All right, so you're done reading. You understood the content, and while you were reading, maybe you quickly underlined a few words that kept popping up everywhere. They were not that important, but I've seen this word before in other passages, and the word keeps popping up. I'm not sure what it is, so quickly underline it. Keep reading. Underline something else. Now you're done reading. Now you can go back over the passage and look for those words, and then you just go nuts. Look it up, put it in your flashcards, repeat it out loud, write sentences with it, and so forth. Okay, so I hope this makes sense, that there's a time for reading, there's a time for studying vocabulary, studying grammar, working on your pronunciation, and so forth. Okay, if you're reading, you're reading. Now, to improve your vocabulary, you can do it through direct instruction. Get on YouTube, and then you have people teaching vocabulary. If you're taking a language course in your target language, vocabulary will be a big part of it. Your textbook will have lists of words, and just follow the instructions from your teacher or textbook or what have you. Okay. But you also learn vocabulary through exposure to the language. A lot of people forget that. Through listening. If you remember the listening session, it said, find like that website I showed you where you could read something, listen to it. Maybe in that, whatever that you just listened to, there were a few words that you're interested in. Well, get out your dictionary. And so you're practicing your listening and then looking up words, looking up vocabulary, and so forth. Okay. Reading. You can learn vocabulary through reading. Something that people don't realize when they say, reading is the best way to learn vocabulary, which I honestly, I don't think it is the best way. It is one of the ways. But the thing with reading is that if you're reading and you see a word, you will probably forget it. Even if you understand what the word is, oh, that's how you say this, you'll probably forget it. Okay, then you're going to have to read something else where that word shows up again, and something else, and something else. It takes like about 5 to 7 times that you read a word for you to start remembering that word. It doesn't even mean that you're going to use the word. Okay, so yeah, reading. If you read a lot, if you read a variety of materials, if you read and read and read and read, eventually you will see a lot of words being repeated, a lot of words showing up in what you're reading. But you have to read a lot. Okay, you can expect to read, couple of pages a week and I'm going to learn vocabulary that way. It's not going to happen. Of course, speaking, if you have the opportunity to speak to people using the target language, you may hear words that you didn't know. And a lot of times, because when you're speaking to someone, let's say you're having a conversation with someone, there's that conversation has a context. And because of the context, somebody says something that you understand, even though you never heard the word. You never heard that word in that language, but when you heard it, you knew exactly what the person was saying. You can do the same in reading, right? You're reading, and because of the context, you know what the word means. Don't stop to look it up. Use the context. Okay? You can even use writing, because if you're writing and then you say, oh gosh, no, I don't know how to. Every time I write, I get stuck on this word. Look it up. Okay, so exposure, any kind of exposure will give you opportunities. Okay, now here are my 7 tips to improve your vocabulary. I have a video on this topic. It's on the ESL channel. However, regardless what language you're learning, I think the 7 tips apply. So again, the link is in the description to this live stream. And why is it taking so long? When you learn a new language, the first thing you do is learn new words. Okay, I don't know why I wanted to play that, but okay. So here are the 7 tips for learning vocabulary. So pay attention to new words. That's it. That's the tip. Pay attention. Okay, pay attention. Be curious about vocabulary. That goes back to if you are motivated to learn something, you will learn it. You will engage your brain. You will do things because you want that. You want to achieve that goal. If you're one of those people that you learn the language well enough that you can communicate with people, and you go, yeah, I speak it well enough, I don't need to learn anything new, you won't. Your vocabulary will always be at that level. You might learn a few words here and there. But if you pay attention, somebody says a word, you go like, oh, I want to remember that word, okay? But remember, if you're reading, you're reading. If you're talking to someone, focus on the conversation, okay? But you're curious about words, you're driven to learn vocabulary. Second tip is do not obsess over vocabulary. Okay, some people get so obsessed over learning vocabulary that if they're talking, they're speaking, and they don't know the word, they panic. Okay, or like if they're reading, all they're focused on in the passage that they're reading is the vocabulary. They're vocabulary. Remember when I said you read, and then after you read, you go back and you look up the words that you're interested in learning? Some people will underline every word they didn't understand. Nah, that's obsession. It's like, I have to understand every single word. Chill. Don't be obsessed. Roxana says, thank you, Professor. Very interesting class. I'm going to start reading and improve you. Good. Do that. Everybody should start reading and read a lot. Me, myself included. I need to read more. Okay, also learn words and expressions in context. It's okay for you to memorize lists. And sometimes that's, just give me a list of words and I'll repeat it 100 times and memorize the vocabulary. But words make more sense and they kind of come to life when you learn them in context. Okay, because you see it in writing, you watched a video where someone used an expression, or there's a lesson in your textbook where that vocabulary is shown. So as much as possible, learn words and expressions in context. But if you want to memorize lists, go nuts. Focus on useful words first. Okay, some people want to know every word in the language and they start memorizing lists and looking up crazy words that nobody uses. Okay, then you have all these words that you memorized, painstakingly memorized, and you go talk to a native speaker of that language, and they go, "What? The what?" And they have no idea what you're saying because you're using words that most people don't know. And when I say useful, it's not just about common words versus uncommon words, but especially if you're starting learning a language, there are some words that you're going to use a lot more, or words that you need for basic communication, right? So focus on those words that you need. If you're learning a language because you want to be able to talk about, you're an engineer, and as an engineer, you want to be able to read about engineering in the target language, then focus on those words, engineering words. If all you want out of the language is to be able to read about engineering, you don't need to know, the word for egg, eggplant, the names of animals. Who cares? I need to read about engineering, right? So first, focus on the words that are the most useful to you, and the other words, like, I don't have time for all these words. And then as your vocabulary improves, eventually you're going to get to those less useful words that are always good to know. Okay? Find a good dictionary and learn how to use it. Actually, Roxana asked about dictionaries before for another video, and I'm working on a video about dictionaries. So Roxana, sorry, video's not ready yet. But a good dictionary usually has a lot of examples, depending on the language. A language like English, you have to have a dictionary that shows you the pronunciation of the word. Otherwise, just looking at the spelling, you have no idea how to pronounce a word in English. It has examples. If you look up a word and it has only one or two definitions, when you know that word has like 5, 10 different meanings, but that dictionary has only the first 2 meanings, maybe you need a better dictionary. Okay? Find a good dictionary, but you need to learn how to use it. Okay? Dictionaries have a lot of information that sometimes people ignore because they're not sure how to use it. Thank you, Muludi. Keep track of your new words. If that's something that if you're really engaged in learning the language, I think it's a good idea to keep track of the new words. I see that with my students a lot. Like, we have a textbook, so we do chapter 1, and they learn vocabulary and blah, blah, blah. By the time you get to chapter 5, they forgot, chapter 1. Because they're not keeping up with it. They're not going back and reviewing the words. And the words are right there. There are lists, right? Each chapter has a vocabulary list. If you don't have that kind of material, create your own list. You can have a notebook, you can use flashcards. I like using flashcards for language learning. I make my own flashcards. So what you do is you get your flashcards, right? So you write the word that you want to remember on one side. On the other side, you write the meaning, write examples, write example sentences so you know how to use the word. Okay, you can write the pronunciation if you have to and all that stuff. And then, you have your own personalized stack of vocabulary words. So every now and again, get your flashcards, look at the word, try to remember the definition. If you can't, put it over here. This is the stack of words you don't know very well. Okay, if you get to a flashcard, you go like, oh, every time I see this flashcard, I already know. Well, get rid of it. Okay, that's a way to do that. Of course, some of you may be saying, oh my God, use an app for that, right? You can do that. The reason I like the old flashcards is because you get to actually write. You write the words, write the examples, write little notes there. And those apps, you don't get to do that part. There's another link in the description for spaced repetition apps. I am not saying that I'm recommending these or not. It's just something for you to look at and do your own research. I hear a lot of language learners on YouTube talk about Anki. It's a program that it's called a space repetition program. Space repetition means that you create your cards over here. You put the words that you want to learn. And then from time to time, you get your app out and you go through the words like the flashcards. If you don't know a word, if you make a mistake, the program will keep track of the word and it will show it to you again after some time. That's why it's called spaced. It leaves some space. So you keep using the app and then boop, that word pops up again. And you still don't know it. And then it'll wait a little bit and show you the word again until every time the program shows you that word, you know it. Then the program will put it to the side. But then after some time, a month, the word will pop up again. So it's a way to keep showing the word with spaces in between. And the program is keeping track of what you know or don't know for you. So I like the idea of using an app. I'm very technology oriented. I have no problem. The only thing is you don't get to write. When you create your cards, you get to write it. But it's no big deal. There are other ways that you can write the words. And finally, my 7th tip for vocabulary learning is really kind of a stupid. How are we doing time-wise? Oops. Kind of a stupid tip, but people don't think about it. Come up with your own technique. Okay, what works for you? You like to write lists? Do that. Oh, I like to use the cards, but I also do this. And so I get all these different tips that I hear here and there, and I do it my own way. Okay, don't be afraid to try different things, see what works for you. Don't do something that, it's like I gave you the idea with the flashcards. You don't like it? Don't do it. Or try it. Try it a few times, and then you go like, I forget about the cards. I misplace them. Then don't do it. Okay. If you have a better way of doing this, do it your way. Okay. If you like having an app, do the app. Do the app plus a notebook in addition to the app. Do your own thing. Okay. And I think it's really important for you to kind of chill. Don't be afraid to try new things. Take charge of your education and just relax and enjoy the process. I think there's a lot of pressure for people to perform really well. We've talked about, my fear that sometimes students are so focused on, I want to sound like a native, that they end up putting so much pressure on themselves that the language learning experience is not as enjoyable. Okay, I'm not saying that everything in language learning has to be enjoyable, but don't make it so miserable that you don't want to do it anymore. Okay, yeah, there's a little bit of pain involved, but self-flagellation is not the way to go. So the bottom line is get as much exposure to your target language as possible through reading, speaking, listening, and all that. It'll help your reading will help your reading, of course, and listening, speaking, all that will help your vocabulary. And be patient. You can learn new vocabulary words when you're older than 100, if you want to. If you're if you're 100 years old and you're still engaged with people and you're reading new things, you're getting information, you're gonna be learning new vocabulary. Okay, so I've been learning English for 1 year and I'm very frustrated with my vocabulary. I'm like, come on, 1 year. Maybe you're doing better than you're giving yourself credit for. Maybe your vocabulary really sucks, then do something about it, right? But maybe you're just putting too much pressure on yourself. Be patient. Just go one word at a time, and in time, you'll be able to do what you want. All right, let me get rid of this thing here that's in the way. All right, so I got everybody, right? Roxana, once again, thank you so much for the super chat. It really helps a lot. YouTube goes through a slump in the summer. People don't watch videos in the summer or something. So we're going through the summer slump, and I depend on people, helping out, watching videos and doing all this stuff. But a super chat is really helpful. Thank you, Roxana. Thank you, everybody that was here. Ellison. Choice, thank you so much for coming. Lithuania, Ramonica from Texas, right? And Robson Assem from Brazil, Fernando from Argentina, Katie from New Mexico, Katie Denson, Sharon Hauser, did you tell me where you're from? Roxana from Mexico. Very, very, very eclectic, very international crowd here. Seth, thank you so much. All right, I don't see any questions popping up. I hope you guys were taking notes, and that's why you're quiet. Really appreciate it. I enjoyed it, and I hope you enjoyed it too. Nope, no more questions. All right, guys. Thank you so much. See you next Saturday. Next Saturday, we're going to talk about improving your grammar and writing. Oh, that is fun. That is so much fun. Grammar and writing. Everybody loves to moan and groan and cry about grammar and writing. Seth from Turkey, welcome. All right, guys, thank you so much. See you in a week. Bye.